I'd like to briefly introduce the panelists. Dana Theractivist Johnson is currently the Director of Youth Housing and a trainer with the Rainbow Community Center of Contra Costa County. They are an author, documentary filmmaker, DEI and B practitioner, and professional development trainer. Dana has 18 years experience counseling and providing services to justice-involved youth. Dana is an author and filmmaker of the memoir, Their Activist, They, Them, Theirs, a narrative embracing identity, intersectionality, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dana serves as an LGBTQ+ commissioner and Pride Initiative co-chair for the County of San Mateo and is a board member of Coast Pride Center. Dana is a fellow of Equality of California Institute Leadership Academy and inaugural class of 2022. A member of the Leadership Council of San Mateo County.
Thank you.
Alexis Sanchez is the Director of Advocacy and Training with the Sacramento LGBT Community Center. Alexis's background is in public health policy with a specialization in substance use disorders and the LGBTQIA+ community. She was a thought leader in her field and worked to raise awareness of how systems of oppression lead to shorter lifespans and poorer health for marginalized communities, and how the only way to improve the health of marginalized communities is the dismantling of these systems. She has also served on the City of West Hollywood's Transgender Advisory Board for 4 years, and in this role, worked to create numerous policy changes and campaigns to create a safer city for transgender people. Alexis is an alumni of the Equality California Institute Leadership Academy as well, and she serves on the board of directors for Still Bisexual, a national bi+ advocacy organization, and was named Woman of the Year 2020 for California 28 by Representative Adam Schiff. Senator Caroline Menjivar was elected in November 2022 and represents Burbank and San Fernando Valley in California's 20th Senate District. The daughter of Salvadoran immigrants, she was born and raised in communities she now represents. Menjivar served in the Marine Corps from 2009 to 2016. She was last stationed at Miramar as a radio operator and communications platoon sergeant. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a military policy until 2011, during which Menjivar was in a relationship with her now wife. Menjivar has volunteered on the board of Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, Los Angeles chapter, the advisory board of Help Groups Kaleidoscope, and as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for San Fernando Valley Young Dems Club. She is a current member of the San Fernando Valley Marine Corps League and is a commissioner on the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Welcome everyone to the panel. Let's jump right in. And I'm going to make sure this is recording now. It is. Okay. Sorry about that. Dana, maybe I can record some of your introduction separately. Sorry. All right. So let's jump right in. Senator Menjivar, you have an extensive military background along with an education in social welfare and experience as an emergency medical technician. But it was during your work as a fellow on the LA Mayor's gender equity team where you realized the fight for equality and equity would be your life's work. As a California senator, is much of your decision-making viewed through a gender equity lens? And if so, what does that look like and how do you ensure that lens is also intersectional?
Hi, yes, of course. And first, thank you so much for having me on this panel. Absolutely. I mean, everything we do has to be intersectional. I'm a queer Latina female. And, you know, if I'm not advocating on behalf of myself, who else is going to advocate on behalf of me? And I would say even in the Marine Corps, as one of the only women, as one of the only queer individuals in the Marine Corps, I understood how important it was to look at everything through an intersectional lens. And I'm thankful I got the opportunity to work on the Genders Equity team for Mayor Eric Garcetti to further that work. So what that looks like here in Sacramento is ensuring that every policy gets at the root of our most vulnerable communities. So whenever I introduce something, whenever I chair budget sub 3 subcommittee on health and human services, I ask, how is this going to impact our most vulnerable? When we talk about CalWORKS, when we talk about CalFresh, when we talk about environmental justice, who is at the table? The people at the table look like the individuals that our environmental issues are impacting directly or not? Are we reflective of the state of California? My district is 60% Latino. I am reflective of my district. My stories are similar to the individuals that I represent now. So everything has to be looked at through an intersectional lens, or else you're not going to be helping anybody. You're not going to be helping the entire community. So I'm very mindful of that. And through my capacity in the Women's Caucus, the Latino Caucus, and the LGBTQ Caucus, I have the ability to bring my perspectives in all those respective caucuses as well.
I love that. Thank you so much. That question, important question, who is at the table, right? Who is the most impacted? Are those the most impacted at the table? Thank you for that. Alexis, so much of your work in advocacy is around improving support and opportunities for members of the transgender community and pursuing policy changes that will help to bring equity, safety, and access of opportunities to trans individuals, especially trans women of color. Can you tell me more about this work and provide the folks listening any concrete steps to take to support transgender advocates doing this work?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here with like a really cool panel. I think like all of you are just like remarkable individuals. So work to support transgender individuals. So I first came out 9 years ago and transitioned, and I think for me that whole process has been it's challenging, right? Like coming out as a especially as a transgender woman and having to navigate not only misogyny but transphobia and like multiple layers of marginalization was a little bit of it was a little bit jarring, a little bit challenging, right? I think like I had some experience with discrimination being Latina. But you know, being a woman is like a whole nother level, and then being trans is a whole nother level on top of that. In starting on my journey, I started to learn a little bit about systems of oppression and seeing like, okay, I had a base understanding. Like my mom would tell me growing up like, oh, I have to work so much harder because I'm short, because I'm Latina, and because I'm a woman, so I don't get a chance to make as many mistakes as the people around me. So that to me was like the seeds of intersectionality being kind of planted. And when I started to do work in the LGBTQ plus community, I started to key in especially on the intersections of race and gender identity and how that applies to Black transgender women. And some of like the key some of the key challenges that Black trans women face, higher unemployment rates by I think like I think it's 3 times the national average. Transgender women being I think it's like 40 times more likely or 40% more likely to have a household income lower than $10,000 a year. Higher rates of housing insecurity. The list goes on and on and on. So I think when trying to do, much like Senator Menjivar, when trying to do kind of public policy work, that's really the intersections that I'm looking at, the intersections of race, the intersections of immigration status, and the intersections of gender identity and the challenges kind of inherent within. A lot of the bills that we support at the SAC Center this session specifically look at housing because I think lack of access to safe, supportive housing is such a challenge for everyone across the state, but for transgender people of color specifically. So signing on to bills such as the Unicorn Homes Bill or, you know, anything having to do with foster care, all of those things we know are going to have an impact on the most marginalized in the community.
Thank you. So when you talk so you're talking about multiple layers, race, gender identity, and you talked about, you know, Latina women, trans, right? And so if if you're speaking to like, if I'm asking you, like, where would I go to support those bills that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think there are organizations that are doing incredible advocacy. I think if you're looking to support transgender women specifically, or Trans Latinas, Trans Latina Coalition does incredible advocacy work. Some of the bills that they put forth just have been life-changing for a lot of their constituents. I think I'm originally from Southern California, 818. Hey,
Oh,
so
awesome.
um, but I think in Southern California, we have like Unique Women's Coalition, which is a Black trans organization led by a Black trans woman. And I think finding other orgs such as those that are led by marginalized individuals and donating money, donating time, or just seeing what they're working on and supporting is a really great way. And then I think LGBT centers as a whole also apply a pretty intersectional lens. I think at the SAC LGBT Center, I run our public policy department, and I really do hone in on that. At LA LGBT Center, I'm good friends with the people in their public policy department, and they also like hone in on the intersections of race and gender identity as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So Dana, you are a person who wears many professional hats. Author, documentary filmmaker, DEI&B practitioner, professional development trainer, and their activist. Can you explain to me and the audience a little bit more about their activism and your approach with young people who seek services at Contra Costa Community Center and other communities you serve?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me as well. As Alexis shared, it is amazing to be on a panel of such distinguished that we have here. My name is Dana Johnson, for those that may not have heard, and pronouns are they, them, theirs, identifying as trans, not binary, and the Director of Youth Housing over at Rainbow Community Center in Contra Costa County. And to answer your question, Kimberly, first, breaking down their activists, it is two words put together as therapeutic activism. I have a background with social work, as I had my master's in social work person. So I've actually been doing social work for a lot of years now. And within my social work hat and background, a lot of activism that I've done have been very community centered healing. I share that a lot of times with advocacy, we really target and look into the actual physical part of the advocacy, but are we also looking at that mental and that emotional part of the advocacy in which, you know, a lot of trauma for folks of color and what we have had to advocate just for rights and the different traumas that have put upon us, and how it can be triggering to a lot of our mental and our emotional health. And so, with therapeutic activism as a theract what I do is do a lot of advocacy in regards of embracing identity, embracing intersectionality, embracing that diversity, equity, inclusion, but also that belonging piece as working closely with LGBTQIA plus folks, people of color, and other marginalized communities. So, really trying to do expansive work on really uplifting the importance of our more marginalized populations that we do have within, you know, our LGBTQIA plus umbrella. I think with the work that we're doing over in Rainbow Community Center, that's a lot of the things that we're doing with expansiveness. We have amazing wraparound services that is offered internally within our program that we are providing for community. We are the only LGBTQIA plus community center for Contra Costa County. So we service the whole county. So the wraparound services really help for us to make sure that we are giving that support to those targeted marginalized populations, but then also those that are invisible in spaces and do not have that accessibility to services or resources, and we can also help support with them. Rainbow Community Center is also a rural type of an LGBTQ plus center, so we're really trying to embrace, you know, expansive through the lens of that to being that rural type of a space.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, the emphasis on belonging. I love that because you know, you can get somewhere, you can be somewhere, and They can do all the, DEI efforts, but if you don't feel a sense of belonging, you're not going to stay there. You just aren't. So thank you for that. And the wraparound services. I mean, that's huge. I think I'm always telling people that, especially with homelessness, like, oh, just build them a house. Well, that it doesn't work like that. Let's give them some more services, wraparound services, right? Thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. All right, Senator Menjivar. So we are in the middle, I was towards the end of Pride Month, but a month where we honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising and celebrate, uplift, and highlight the LGBTQI plus community. So after 14 years of promoting inclusivity, visibility, and representation, we are now experiencing a significant amount of cultural backlash that is having an effect on public policy. So this year we have seen astonishing a number over 400 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced and significant anti-trans legislation passed in several states. We are also seeing new bans on drag performance, book bans, and limits to gender affirming care for youth and adults, and a renewed focus on mandating segregation by sex or perceived gender, which adversely affects youth and adults in schools in our communities, as we know. So my question for you is what are the most critical changes in California's legislation that must be made now to protect the progress that was made in the last 14 years and to prevent rollbacks and to face the future, to guarantee safe spaces for LGBTQIA plus youth to grow and develop?
That's heavy, right? It's a lot happening. This month, I've said that in my 34 years of youth, each year I felt I was getting more rights. Prop 8, we destroyed, we destroyed that. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. In 2015, I got the right to get married, and I just felt it was getting better and better. We fought against Trump's horrendous trans ban in the military. We won that, and I felt we were doing such great work. And then hits 2022, 2023, and this is the first year and first Pride Month where I feel like I've had to fight back once again. And it's been a somber feeling to the point that where I'm not having a parade this Saturday in my district, but a march. A march against, and our theme is United in Resistance, because we're going back to what I felt when I was a kid. Having to fight and having to be united in this resistance, not just in other states. Let's not, lack of a better professional term, let's not get it twisted here. This is happening in California, where in my own backyard, I had a pride flag be burned in my district. I'm having same-sex business owners be harassed because they're a same-sex business owner. In Glendale, my neighboring community of my district, I'm pretty sure y'all saw the protest happening. The OC voted to bring down every single pride flag. Huntington Beach, Solvang, Chino Hills School District looking to ban. It's happening in our backyard. And while here in Sacramento, we're standing very strong, there's 12 queer legislators, first in history, that have band together to play defense, and something that hasn't been in a while. So at our forefront right now, we're looking to enshrine ACA 5 in our Constitution, to enshrine marriage protection in California's Constitution, just the way voters did last year with Prop 1, where we enshrined individuals' right to reproductive services, abortion, into California's Constitution. That's going to hit voters' ballot if it passed next year in 2024. That's really important, because my 6-year marriage to my wife needs to be protected, and everyone else's right to be married to whoever they want. We're dealing with earlier this month where the legislature honored Pride Month, where Republican Assembly members walked off the floor in just a direct disrespect to our existence. They walked off. They're harassing my colleagues. They're photoshopping photos and putting them on social media for conservative bait. But we're not going back. And you know, I'm just thinking about 19-year-old Caroline and feeling like this world was against her. And once again, I'm feeling, you know, this Senator Caroline Menjivar, now the world going against me again and all my LGBTQ plus communities. So I have bills that are looking to protect our trans individuals from further harassment when it comes to their dead naming. Trans individuals who are mental health therapists and they get outed because their online license still has their dead name or birth name. And we need to close that, right? I have a bill around infertility and being able to ensure that LGBTQ plus community couples or single individuals can start a family if they choose. Because if we're going to fight for people's right to not have a child, we should also fight for someone's right to be able to have a child and not have to pay $10,000 to $20,000 for IVF and so forth. Because that's the only way me and my wife would be able to start a family, right? So we want to redefine what it means to be infertile. And that's a huge bill that we're working on this year. We need to ensure that we're addressing still paid leave, which is antiquated to this day in the state of California, and what it means to care for the definition of a family member. We're looking at still gender neutral bathrooms in our schools. Right now, I'm a co-author with Assemblymember Rick Chavez de Burr, also in LA County, regarding training in our schools. Requiring LGBTQ plus curriculum in our schools. And you heard from my background is that I used to sit on a board called GLSEN, where I trained K through 12 schools on how to be safe and affirming for our queer youth, because they're at the core of all these attacks right now. It is being driven at our youth. It is being directed at our youth, and our queer youth have the highest rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide, that we can't mess around with this, because these are kids' lives at stake. Because I know what it felt like to be a kid and not have any support. I am so glad I could turn to my friends who were navigating sexual orientation at the same time, but not every youth has that. So if your school doesn't support you, if your family doesn't support you, if you don't have queer friends that are going through the same process, where do you go? Who do you turn to for support? So we need to ensure that there's training in our schools, that we are putting laws on the books to banning of books, that we're teaching inclusivity, because it's, at the end of the day, this is about kindness. This is just about kindness. Because the pride flag that was burned in my district was because of a book that said some families have two mommies and some families have two daddies, period. That's it. That's what people are up in arms up to, because we're sharing and talking about inclusivity. So this is a time right now that we need to help elect individuals into school boards, because that is at the heart. They're attacking at the schools. So I encourage people to run for your local school board, run for that office, organize in those communities, in those small Chinos, Huntington Beach areas, run for those, organize phone bank, because that's where we could create some change. Support our teachers, show up to these meetings and voice your concern against this. It's a dire situation, everybody, and this is an all hands on deck situation.
Thank you so much. I was furiously writing. I'm glad I'm recording this. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's about kindness. It's about humanity. We're all human beings, and I love that you say that you're highlighting the fact that it does start in our communities. I just had this conversation with somebody that people think election, you know, presidential election is the most important. Yes, our president is important. Yes, you get that. But it starts in the communities. It is at the schools. I mean, that's like the most impactful in our communities, right? School boards, city councils, those type of things. So I might have to run for school board.
There you go.
Thank you so much for that. All right. So speaking of change and progress, Dana, you have extensive experience counseling and providing services to justice-involved youth. And in your opinion, What type of reform is needed in the juvenile justice system for LGBTQIA plus youth specifically?
Thank you for this question. I wanted to say that to uplift, the importance of those that may be underserved in a lot of the juvenile justice spaces that identify as LGBTQIA plus. I want to say first, looking at the various reforms that Governor Newsom is trying to do within juvenile justice, I am thankful for those. Um, I think that the lens of it is a little more of a binary type of a focus and not looking at the non-binary space of, the fluidity that we do have within LGBTQIA plus folks, especially youth. And so, in my experience, within the juvenile justice spaces that I've been in, reform wise, is one, I think that there needs to be more of a change of how some of these juvenile justice maybe centers and systems are. There is various different like work that folks can do within BSEC to kind of get, what requirements they are supposed to have for LGBTQIA plus youth within these spaces. But I noticed that they're not being followed. So they have that stuff, but it's not actually being followed in process when the actual LGBTQIA plus person is brought into the juvenile justice spaces. My hope is as we're looking at reform, understanding that a higher population of LGBTQ plus youth, especially with those that are intersecting as BIPOC folks, are being detained more and more and more. And in some cases, it is just because of the fact of maybe there are some abandonment issues that they may be having within families of being belonged for who they are and their authentic self. And then now they're placed in these systems. So the hope is that the system can, one, be a little bit more inclusive in the actual youth that are in there to provide accessibility and resources and services for LGBTQ folks. It seems as if there's not a lot of things that is out there for LGBTQIA plus youth in regards of, what can you do to work on your recidivism rate so that you don't come back to these places? What specific resources are targeted and provided for you to get the support that you may need so that you can do the things that is asked so that you don't have to be back in this place. Looking at it, and I don't know if this has something that may be tied to the prison to school pipeline, but just how can you be more inclusive and be expansive in the actual work that is being done with that to include LGBTQIA plus folks in these conversations and in these services and resources that may be out there. My hope is that all of these juvenile justice spaces become more of a service center and that the detaining part, we really go away from that. These are youth, these are young people, these are some that have been through the most traumatic experiences, especially for those that identify as LGBTQIA plus. There's facts and there's statistics that's showing that they are very underserved. And what are we doing to address and support them in these spaces? And a lot of times I feel it's as if they're being maybe warehoused because there's no other space that we can find to help support them. And so I just hope that, again, as the different reforms and different things are being established, that we are keeping in mind a more expansive approach of looking at how we can serve all youth, because it seems as if the LGBTQIA plus youth, it may not be something that is actually being elevated in some of those rooms that the change is being asked to be made in. We heard the senator speaking of, the dead name and the mispronouncing of folks, and these are adult folks. Imagine being a youth and you're being into these spaces, and you are identifying as a certain way, but because of maybe the lack of training that folks may have, you are being re-traumatized and you're being placed in a dead name or dead space that you do not identify with. Training is very key, And I don't know if there's a way to mandate more of those trainings to try to be a part of this whole reform and change system that is coming upon. So there's a lot that I feel that can be done. I know in the spaces that I have been in, just trying to train the prospective administrative space on that, but I know that a lot of those trainings aren't mandated, and some of the maybe juvenile justice spaces within Northern County, California, don't even kind of want that training. So how can we try to move forward on, the education of that so that these folks can at least kind of feel, that there are services out there for them that they can access, because a lot of them, they don't even know, because again, that is not being provided to them on how that reform can look. I think that's probably what I want to share about that. There's a lot of work though that can be done on that. There's some steps that's being done, but of course, there's a lot more work that can be done in those spaces.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah, I agree with you. Training is key in it, but it has to start from the leadership. It has to start from the top, and then really have that buy-in. And like you said, even if there's training, sometimes it's not always implemented. So what are those checks and balances? Who's being held accountable? It's important. And yeah, the goal is to you want youth. I, I'm going to say children, because to me, anybody under 18 is a child. um, you want them to feel safe and to get those services and access and opportunities. And yeah, the goal with that and the goal of reducing recidivism is important. So thank you, Dana. All right. Okay. Alexis. So many people want to be, I'm going to do air quotes, allies. I'm just going to say the air quotes, allies to LGBTQI plus folks, but are unsure of how best to be supportive. So my question is, how can folks be good allies to the community as a whole and to those with multiple intersecting and marginalized identities with LGBTQIA plus communities? So sorry, there's two parts to this question. So we've been talking a lot about policies and advocacy. So is it all about government? We don't think so, right? We've been talking about the community. So where I think sometimes people feel, for lack of a better word, but I think this would be the word, like discomfort, like speaking up in my home or in places of worship or at my kids' school. So where can, if I was to ask you the question, like, where can I be of the most help, and how can I make sure I follow the lead of the community being impacted?
Yeah, thanks. This is a really great. Oh, sorry, I'm having. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is a really great question. I think my answer last year and my answer this year would be different, and will have evolved, because as Senator Menjivar was talking about, like, we're in a different space this year, especially with like fervent anti-trans like movement gaining a lot of steam. But that being said, allyship is a spectrum, and I think the more privilege we have, sometimes the more access we have to the full spectrum of being an ally, right? Like, if someone is being harassed on the bus or on the train, if I am an able-bodied cisgender white man, my bystander intervention is going to look very different than a trans woman of color, right? And that is like that access to privilege. Like, am I able-bodied? Am I large? Like, all of these things, who I am as an individual is going to open up what my allyship looks like. I think sometimes people from really marginalized communities that aren't trans or aren't LGBTQ plus, they say, like, what can I do? I'm really poor. I'm like how can I be an ally? And allyship in those spaces can look different, right? It can be supporting a local like LGBTQ plus bakery, or LGBT supporting like a local business, or even like putting up a pride flag, or even if a person feels comfortable interrupting. I think one of the most powerful forms of allyship a person can do is just, there are oftentimes jokes which perpetuate transphobia, misogyny, homophobia that'll happen in gatherings among friends or gatherings kind of among family members. And something that's really powerful that we can do is just say like, hey, like, why is that funny? I don't think it's really funny. Like I don't think we should be making that type of joke, right? And I think interrupting that kind of language can do a lot and can be a really powerful form of allyship. That being said, for those who have more capacity or access to capital or access to privilege, tracking the different organizations that are doing, Senator Menjivar brought up school boards, and I think that is like, it's been the focus of right-wing campaigns for probably going on about 3 years now, with them starting with anti-mask, anti-vax, moving to critical race theory, and now moving to anti-LGBTQ plus stuff, right? And the entire time it's been gaining momentum, organized by kind of a lot of the same individuals. So if people have the capacity to show up at actions or show up in support of these school board meetings, where safe, where possible, I think that's something that's really powerful and really needed. I was in a hearing in the assembly yesterday where there were, 30 plus parents who were denying the existence of trans folks. So having a couple more parents or individuals that show up and say like, hey, I love my trans kid and this bill would be really helpful for us. That is a type of allyship that's really needed right now.
Thank you very much. I love that. Allyship is a spectrum, and I consider it a verb as well. It's action. And I love that at the spectrum, like supporting, something from interrupting a joke, or to make people think that actually are on the other end of that joke, or supporting a local shop. So I love that. Thank you, Alexis. All right, Dana, this is a very long question, so bear with me. So national conversations around racial justice and equality for Black people has grown over the last few years. Many Black LGBTQIA plus young people continue to face significant challenges to their safety and security and are overrepresented in populations of unhoused youth. Even youth who may have significant support in their lives are often facing difficult conversations with people who are uninformed about race, queer identities, or the intersection of both. What are some of the ways that we can build on the successes of queer solidarity actions and movements of the recent past to support, uplift, and protect LGBTQIA plus youth whose intersecting identities offer unique perspectives and valuable insights that are often not as valued as they should be? And second part of the question, how can we work to remove some of the barriers and challenges faced by youth already navigating so much to make their pathway a little easier?
Thank you. That is a very long question, so I'm going to do my best to try to break this down into pieces. One, you were asked about, I guess, the queer solidarity actions and movements of the recent past. I want to say, to speak to that, one, let us remember that the first Pride Parade was actually a riot, and there was a lot of work that was being done to bring solidarity in those spaces of rights of folks that should be receiving that. Some of those leaders that brought in that riot and that bringing that voice were Black identifying leaders as well. So I'm saying that to say that our ancestors have already kind of generated that space for us of a march of solidarity of we are all in this fight together, to try to make sure that our intersectional identities that maybe others may have are being uplifted, to try to make sure that the solidarity of we are all underserved folks and that we deserve the rights and the safety and the support from community. So I wanted to start with that just to say that, and we're still trying to have this fight. We're still trying to bring our solidarity together as folks to have our visibility, to have uh, the rights that we should receive, just like as a cisgender individual, maybe of different race, would receive that. So I would say to uplift it is to continue to be in that voice, continue to gather in community with each other, to share the importance of embracing our intersectional identities that we have within our LGBTQIA plus spectrum. Um, Doing that expansive work, as I shared, on those more marginalized places that may not have that belonging area or may not have that voice and that visibility, and bringing them to that space of the importance of having them there as well. Um, I think we shared about allies, and I hope that they are looking at being more like of an accomplice type of folks. But I think working with folks that are more of accomplice mind, that also believe that we should be receiving, rights and solidarity within that can connect with us to build on that importance is very helpful. I think it's great as a community if we can do it, but it's really more helpful if we can get accomplices to gather with us to kind of bring the importance of, just basic rights. I mean, some of these things that are being brought up is just basic rights, like our trans youth wanting to play sports. This is just basic things. Um, your pronouns being respected, your chosen name being used. These are things that are basic rights that a lot of our cisgender um, maybe community members have no problem with receiving it. But why is it such an issue with us? I want to give an example of, let's say we mispronounce a cisgender person's name, and they are saying that their name is Daniel, but then you mispronounce it and you may say something like Daniela or something. That person is going to immediately say, actually, my name is pronounced as Daniel. And then I've noticed in a lot of our heteronormative spaces, it's like, oh, I apologize, no problem. I'll make sure that I'll take care of that. But when you are sharing your pronouns and you are a mispronoun and you share that in a lot of the heteronormative spaces, that same type of response is not received. And I don't understand why. It's just like you mispronounced the person's name. It's the same type of thing. So I mean, I think that, just like I said again, basic rights and things I'm seeing that aren't even being uplifted and respected, and I'm hoping that there is going to be some changes doing this. Sound like Senator Minivar in the space that they're in, they are making a lot of those policies like for these things to happen. And I can only imagine the work that they're doing, and hopefully there's not much pushback they're receiving, but that would be very helpful, to be supportive there. There's a lot that can be done, Emily, and so I don't know that in this space we would answer all those things, but I know that those can be some starts that we can have for our I guess more so Black identifying LGBTQIA plus folks. Just to answer the second part and the barriers, I hope that when folks are working with our young people, that they are understanding the intersectional identity of the person that they are working with at that time. If you're looking at Kimberly Crenshaw and the work on intersectionality and how the importance of working with a person and seeing all their identities that they make up, that they bring, and part of that belonging can really help with servicing that individual and providing them with the tools of access that they need for them specifically. And I think if people take that type of work and expand it in their different spaces they're in, it would be helpful, because I don't know if a lot of that intersectionality is being looked upon when doing LGBTQIA plus work with young folks. Um, I, as a Black, trans, non-binary person, may need different services and different accesses based on me in that equitable piece as we're looking at it. It might be different from someone of a different race that may also identify as trans non-binary. So I think that folks really get in tune and an understanding of the importance of intersectionality work when actually working with LGBTQ plus youth, then maybe you can understand a little bit more of the barriers based on our race that we may receive or based on our gender that we may receive, and how you can provide more of that equitable services for all. That's the answer that I would like to provide. Very good question, by the way.
Thank you. It was a lot, I know. I appreciate that. I like the accomplice mind. Yeah, when you were talking about allyship, accomplice mind. And yeah, I'm gonna remember that one. Thank you. All right. Okay, so Senator Menchar, what is your call to action for persons in positions of power today to ensure that LGBTQIA plus youth have access and opportunity for safe and secure and full future?
Yeah, and I think, you know, the wonderful other panelists spoke to this, and we've embedded in our answers here today. So performative allyship and what it means is it's not just during the month of June, because Dana, Alexis, and I don't just become straight after June, you know. We're queer 365 days out of the year. We need support 365 days out of the year. So July 1st, if I come to you for those in position of power and you're not there standing with me, then that's a problem. So my call to action is let's talk about this on July 1st. You know, come to us then and say, what can I do then? And then that's how I know that you're really here to stand with us. My call to action to those in power would be create spaces for us. That's really important, and elevate our stories. You don't have to come up with your own statement. You don't have to come up with your own action. Elevate the actions that are being led and pushed by queer individuals. That's what's really important, is creating spaces for the queer individuals who are doing the work in this space right now. Elevating our BIPOC community within the LGBTQ plus community, right? Our Black and brown trans women and men doing this work, is elevating them. I think that's really important. And then I would also say, you know, I mentioned earlier about I have a pride event, or I have a pride event this Saturday in my community, because it's a Black and brown community. And while I'm never going to take away anything from West Hollywood, LA, we need representation in our Black and brown communities. My call to you is, you know, go to the areas and communities that need awareness, and bring together those queer leaders to say, how can I help you? Our nonprofits are struggling. They're not a lot. You have your centers, but at least in LA, in my district, people can't get to the LA LGBT center. It's a freeways away. And there's a lot of traffic. I have nonprofits that are struggling to open a brick and mortar. They want a space. Supporting these entities, whether it's through your discretionary funds, whether it's through just your committee funds, or behest, or just I'm asking that we support nonprofits that are doing so much work and yet don't have a physical space to meet. In my district, we need spaces for our youth. Youth need spaces that are accessible to them, because if they're not out, no one can take them. And let's not even get started on our lack of public transportation infrastructure in the state of California. So we need something that is walkable to them. So that's my call to action, is support the people that are doing the work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so many great people doing it. We just need to elevate that work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the accessibility is a huge issue. I'm not from California, and when I moved here, I'm like, what is up with the public transportation system? It's terrible. No, thank you for that. Elevating the people who are doing the work and not reinventing the wheel. You're right, because there are so many people who know what they're doing and need support. So I appreciate that. Okay. So I see we have 4 minutes left, and I'm just going to do a quick lightning round. This is just to the whole panel. And my question is, this was a long question at first, but I'm trying to make it short. So I'm just going to ask the short question. So a lot of youth today have few spaces where they feel safe, as we were talking about, right? We're talking about homes, schools, place of worship, public spaces, and many youth just want to be their authentic self, but are afraid, chastised, or too often threatened or physically harmed. What's one or very short, I know, 1 or 2 sentences that you would say to those youth today? This is for the whole panel, so anybody can. What do you tell them?
You know, I mean, we have your back. We do. I mean, there's so much love that at least I know we have for queer youth, because I can imagine us three remember us when we were our own selves, when we were queer and little, right? And the love that we needed. So we speak from experience there. So I mean, there's so much love for our queer youth. You know, I love y'all so much, and we're doing everything we can to just help y'all be successful and just survive. But we're doing the work. I promise.
I would like to just agree with what the senator shared and just let the young folks know we are their voice. We are bringing that representation. We are bringing, the importance of how we can uplift all of our LGBTQIA plus youth, so that they can feel that they can be their authentic self. Sorry if any of them feel that they trying to be their authentic self, if there have been any safety measures, but just letting it be known we're also fighting for your safety. I think if it is safe, please be your authentic self. But if it's not, also be understanding of that, as we want to make sure the main thing is that you're safe, and reach out to the LGBTQ plus spaces. If your family is not something that's supportive of it, there's a lot of chosen family out there that is willing to be supportive and help you through this journey as well. So hopefully the representation is what's standing out there, and building in our young folks that trust that someone's fighting for you. You're not alone, as the senator said.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo all of that. Tell youth that they're loved, that they're valid, that they have support in their communities, whether that's online or in person, wherever they can find it, and just to hang on, to fight. We're going to build a better future together.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. This was wonderful. And I really appreciate you being part of our first panel today. Really appreciate it. It was so wonderful to have you all share your knowledge and your wisdom and your words of love and kindness. And thank you everybody else for joining. We appreciate it. And just like that, it's 12 p.m. So I will keep in touch, everyone. Really appreciate it. And thanks again. Have a good afternoon. Bye.